Hello and happy Thursday. Welcome to another Lunch and Learn with Purse Strings. For those who are new here, Purse Strings is all about tips, tricks, pieces of advice on how to for women to be financially fearless. But then when you're looking to either, sell your business, you're looking for a business coach, help with business financials, personal financials, divorce, whatever it is, we have top tier financial professionals willing, ready, and able to help. Deborah is one of them. We call these our Purse Strings approved professionals. And so we're so excited to have Deborah on today to talk about kind of the value in your business and really understanding that. But before we dive into all of it, Deborah, could you give us a little intro of who you are and what you do?
Sure. So I do merger and acquisition advisory. I am a FINRA licensed investment banker. So gone through kind of the top tier possible classes. But I wasn't always that. So I started my career as a middle school English teacher. I taught for about 10 years and then hit the mom roadblock, right? Like
Yeah.
had kids and it was going to cost me more to send them to school than I was going to make going back and teaching. So it made no sense. So I took a pause and actually started my own business. I started a gluten-free vegan bakery and went to grow that and figured out how to do capital raising on my own to grow a manufacturing facility, and then
Wow.
realized I don't actually like running a manufacturing facility. Um,
Yeah.
so I had met the founder of our company, Touchstone Advisors, through that process, and he goes, you have one of the most comprehensive plans that I've gotten for this, and you did a capital raise on your own. You could come do what I do, and I'm like, oh no, I can't do that. I don't know enough about finance. Um, so he's like, you know what? You're really smart. I will pay for you to go back to school. I need somebody that's FINRA licensed to come manage, our stock
Wow.
transactions. And I said, okay, I'll do that. Um, and so now here I am. I'm a partner at Touchstone Advisors, managing a group of guys that have been doing this for longer than me. um, so that's kind of my backstory. And through merger and acquisitions, we work with people 3 to 5 years out from exiting to kind of make sure their business gets them the optimized price, right? Nobody
Mhm.
wants to give up their whole career and not leave with a maximum value.
Right.
So that's exactly what we work on.
Awesome. Well, I love that story to start. I mean, it's it's amazing, the process that you went through and just kind of the different things that fall into place in life. But yeah, somebody even just commented, she's so smart. Yeah, it sounds so
Thank you.
impressive. Um, so yeah, we're excited to have you on today to kind of learn more about, selling companies, mergers and acquisitions. Both those are
Mhm.
hard words for me to say. And if anyone, watching live has any questions, you can put them in the comments. We'll get to those. And if you're watching the replay, you can also put them in the comments and we'll come back to those as well. And so first of all, like, you said 3 to 5 years out, companies start working with
Mhm.
you. So what's like the basic overview of how you kind of advise in, either selling your company or merging a company, something like that?
So we look comprehensively at the business as a whole, right? So
Hmm.
we look at every aspect from your leader team to how long you want to stay. So I had one lady at the very beginning that said to me, I'm selling my business. We close in February. I'm leaving for Florida the next day. I'm like, wait, it doesn't actually work like that. So there's a whole lot of preconceived notions about what that means to exit. And
Hmm.
so we kind of start at the beginning in educating them, educating owners that we work with on what the whole process looks like, how to get the team ready that you're going to leave in charge, how to get the finances ready that you want to be, as business owners, there are things that we pay for. Like I pay for my daughter's cell phone, but
Right.
somebody buying my business does not need to pay for my daughter's cell phone. So there are expenses that we kind of work out and add back and adjust through the process of looking at them. We look at the sales process. So when we start working with you, we want to see what is spaced now and
Hmm.
really evaluate when is the right time to sell.
Mhm.
Because even though you may want to leave tomorrow, that doesn't mean the economy and the lending
Right.
environment is what's best timing for you to leave. So we want to try to find the best time for you, the best time for the business. And obviously, there are certain circumstances. Unfortunately, working with one gentleman that's got cancer currently and exiting now is what's happening.
Right.
So that doesn't matter whether the timing is always right.
Right. Yeah, it is kind of yeah, you think exit and then you just kind of wash your hands and you're out where you want to make sure that everything can still run without you being there because especially if you've been that sole owner, for such a long period of time, so much of it still could be up here and you need to make sure
Exactly.
that goes with the company.
Yeah.
Those things stay in order and you kind of make that turnover process.
Yeah. Well, and so by starting earlier, the really neat thing is you can transition that knowledge ahead, right? So you
Hmm.
can have your second in charge stay with the business, and it actually will, buyers will pay more for that.
Hmm.
And it will expand the amount of people that can buy your business and operate it post close.
Right. That's a great point. And so I'm sure then in this, period before, it's also working on, how do we optimize this business to get the most that it's worth, like you were saying.
Absolutely.
And so what are some things that you look at there? How do you even start with that?
Financial statements are always the best place to start. I can't give you a value of your business if your finances come to me in a shoebox without a ton of work, right? So we've got to get those ready for someone else to look at.
Right.
Um, we all see the stock market rises and falls on a dime. Basically, somebody could have a
Mhm.
bad business report and it'll impact the entire stock market. Buyers are just as fickle. So it's really important to keep things framed in the way that they can see them easily, decide easily. And that's
Mhm.
kind of what we start working on. So we start with the finances. Once we get those, we can tell you, oh, look, right now, maybe you're not paying yourself a salary, and that's going to put you in a lower class of businesses. You should start drawing a salary. You should look at, do you own you own your building, your facility? Are you paying
Oh.
rent on that facility? Is it owned in the same entity? So if I'm a buyer, I have to buy your building, or can
Mhm.
we move it to a holding company where you could collect rent into perpetuity for the business remaining, and that can increase your recurring revenue in retirement, which is helpful in a lot of cases. There's just
Mhm.
it's every business, and that's kind of what I like. Like in terms of my educational background, I've done all kinds of crazy stuff, um, and I always like learning.
Mhm.
So every business operates differently. Every industry operates differently.
Mhm.
So every set of advice is going to be individualized to the business.
Yeah, it sounds like once you come in, there still could be a lot of, yeah, long-term things that you have to get done. I mean, if you're
Mhm.
selling a business or selling a building or so buying a building and different things, I mean, those are large purchases that take a while, these
Mhm.
long time moving transactions. So it seems like it is very good to get a professional in early when you know that, this is something
Mhm.
that you want to start pursuing.
Well, and we always say our owners don't know what they don't know,
Right.
right? Like you operate your business on a day-to-day basis.
Hmm.
That hardly ever does anyone say, okay, on April 1st, I need to know exactly what money is owed, where it comes from, who it belongs to, do you have it? And I have owners that look at me and go, what? I've never calculated anything that way. I'm like, there's no reason you would have until this
Right.
process. Um,
Right.
and so there's some nuances of that. And when have you ever looked at your insurance payments and been like, okay, I'm paid through April 1st. I need to make sure I get a refund from then out. That's
Never have I ever.
correct. Correct. There's just things that, and if they come up after a transaction because you went through a transaction without support, then you could end up not getting that prepaid back. You could
Yeah.
end up in a situation where you agreed to something and didn't fully understand what they meant. Um,
Right.
and so that's why we have owners that have tried this themselves and then come to us.
Mm,
And we prefer it the other way. Come to us
of
first. We'll
course.
help you through it all the way. Um,
Definitely. I mean, that's one of the largest probably transactions you do in your life. And so I
Absolutely.
would definitely want a professional there. Somebody asked, besides financials, what else does a business owner need to prepare?
Your org chart.
Mm,
A flat organization is valued far less than an organization that has structure in it.
mm,
So is there a second in charge? Are there people that report to them? How much of that business is dependent on you and your actions?
mm.
That's huge on your on getting you a higher value.
Makes a lot of sense. Um, Definitely. And so, yeah, it's really looking at that value at all these different perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
And then, with hiring a professional, how do you get compensated in this process for all the work that you're doing in this, multi-year process?
So there's several different ways. We believe that every company is different, so we can
Yeah.
structure our fees so that they fit the needs of the business. There's some pretty targeted work at the beginning, so we
Hmm.
do take a retainer at the beginning. I will say it's dependent on the revenue of the business and the
Okay.
expected sale size of the business. All other commissions are pretty much paid at the end.
Mm,
So, and it's entirely based on what the owner receives. So it's obviously in our best interest to get you more, and it's in your best
right.
interest to get you more. So
Right. And it seems like with anything that you would pay out to a professional, it'd be like, you know, the time off your hands, any risk, any just like, again, if you don't do this often, you don't know what you're missing out on. And so
right,
just hiring someone to do all that, they probably earned their own share from that, that
yeah,
you didn't have to deal with.
correct. So I had one client that last year when the employee retention credit came about, we were able to get them we were able to get that applied for and then excluded from the agreement. That covered my whole fee.
Yeah.
Like that was so, and I'm like, they didn't even know it existed prior to that. So there
Wow.
are a lot of business items that, we follow the trends, we stay up on, we probably spend a silly amount of time reading things like that. Um, and we have our support networks to give us the latest and greatest from taxes to, and that's the other thing, we work with your team. So like
Mhm.
if you have an accountant that you have been working with, I don't supplant them in any way, shape, or form. They're the experts in your finances. They're the ones I'm going to go to and ask a million questions.
Yeah.
So
So makes a lot of sense. Yeah, just go to the expert that they have.
yeah.
And so you said you've worked with a lot of different industries and different yeah, types of companies. Does your company specialize in anything specific, or are you only, US companies or certain sizes or
We don't specialize. That's part of what I like. There are certain M&A firms that specialize.
yeah.
I would get bored.
Yeah.
So I have right now. I have a SaaS model tech company. I have an electrical licensing company. I have manufacturing. I have food and bev. We do have some of our guys that I've brought in that came in to specialize. So
Hmm.
one of my advisors is an engineer.
Mm.
He does all the hands-on battery companies, things that there are just companies that you didn't even know existed.
Right.
I did a valuation for a company. Their entire company manufactured the casters on the bottom of things,
That's niche.
right? I was like, that's so awesome that there's a company that does that. Um,
Right.
but we end up with a lot of scenarios like that where this is a great company, makes a great return on revenue, and people will buy them.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, there's something out there for everyone, for sure then. Um, and so I'm trying to see what other questions we have coming in
Mhm.
here. Um, And then, so I assume then you finish out through the whole process of you help finalizing that complete transaction and kind of packaging that up. And then is there any legalities that people should know of? Either like you always bring in a lawyer for this or you guys support with
Correct.
that. How does that work?
So we work with merger and acquisition attorneys. You want
Okay.
to use someone that knows the field. Like we've had
Hmm.
people try to use the person that reviewed their real estate contracts. That's
Hmm.
not really who you want. You'll end up paying more for
Hmm.
that scenario because they have to kind of brush up on preparing schedules and you know, we will work with them if that's what you want, but it will likely cost you more money.
Right.
So we work with M&A attorneys. They do, you know, you're selling a large entity, right? Like
Yeah.
so you want it well documented, who owns what, how it's going to be transferred, when that takes effect, what, you know, what your net working capital is. Like there's a whole bunch of so it's like a 60 to 70 page document for the primary document. Um, we go through that with the attorneys. We stay on board during the conversations. Um, it does a couple things. It gives you another advisor that has heard the negotiation process.
Hmm.
Um, so that because the attorney comes in, so we take it, we prepare you, we build the package that goes to market, we find your buyer, we create a competitive market for your company so that
Mm.
they're actively bidding against each other, which will raise your value.
Wow.
Um, then we negotiate the terms of the letter of interest so that they're in your best interest as much as we can get them. Um, and that is everything from how long you have to stay, what your cash up front is, do you have an owner's note, do you have an earnout? Like there's a whole ton of complexity to this. And then
Yeah.
that document goes to your M&A attorney and becomes the asset purchase or the stock purchase agreement. Um,
Okay.
that is that 60 to 70 page document before we start adding all the schedules. So most of the time it ends up like 300 pages. Um,
Wow.
so us being involved helps it make sure that you're not the only person involved in creating that 300-page document with your, you know, $400 or $500 an hour attorney.
That sounds like a huge feat. I mean, if you tried to be a business owner just taking this on while running a business, whew.
It is it is overwhelming with our support. Like
Yeah.
I won't sugarcoat it. Transacting on your business is not an easy feat. Um,
Right.
it's a cumbersome process. It's worth it at the end. You get a nice exit. You get the income that you can take to your financial advisor to invest. You can retire
Yeah.
comfortably. You know, all the things that you've worked your whole life for. Um,
And then so doing this, like how many businesses are you working on at one time?
So we keep a pretty strong pipeline, and being a managing partner, I'm heavily responsible for maintaining that pipeline. Um,
Yeah.
so I would say I have a lot more in intake stage that then I
Yeah.
can assign to different advisors.
Because I bet they're always staggered, businesses always moving. That's
Correct,
just so
correct.
interesting.
So our goal is for each advisor to close 5 to 6 deals depending on their size.
Hmm.
So like right now, one of mine is closing in the 50 to 60 million mark. And so I don't have like that's 2 transactions.
Yeah.
um, that doesn't count as just one.
Right.
um, but I've got 2 closing in the next 2 months.
Wow.
So and likely one closing a couple months after that. And so
Yeah.
I try to
Interesting.
stagger them. The
Yeah.
closing part is probably the most cumbersome.
Okay.
Um,
Interesting.
but
And somebody said, yeah, a lot of businesses will be transitioning due to the aging population.
correct. There's a large market of baby boomers that are transitioning out.
Are you
It's
noticing that a lot, come up
we
in your
are
business?
we are you know, anytime you have an economic storm of some sort, you get, you know, 10, 15 new requests to start conversations. Whether or not they decide to do anything at that point, becomes another piece of the process. But
Always.
but it's that momentary panic of
Mm-hmm.
I worked my whole life for this. I don't want to have it disappear.
Right, definitely. Well, I feel like you've brought a lot of great information and we've covered a lot of great, just a high level of what this kind of process is like. Is there anything that we didn't touch on that you want to make sure is shared today?
Rely on advisors that you trust. I really can't stress that enough. If you don't feel like you could take advice from your accountant, get a new accountant. If you don't feel like you're working with someone that has your best interest, find somebody that is.
Yeah. It's a great piece of advice.
And whether it's me or somebody else, if you don't
Yep.
trust me, please don't sign with me.
It's a long process. It's a one of the biggest processes in your life. Yeah, make sure it's with somebody you really trust.
Absolutely.
So yeah, thank you, Deborah, for coming on today and sharing your expertise. If anyone has more questions or want to talk to Deborah, her email's been going through the bottom here. She's also one of our Purse Strings approved professionals, so you can check her out on our site, pursestrings.co. And this wraps up our month of kind of women in business. So it's been a great educational month, and we're excited to start next month of talking about how aging parents really affect our financials. So another great topic.
That's a scarier topic.
I agree. But it happens to all of us. So we got to talk about it. But yeah, thank you, Deborah, for coming on today. And we'll talk to everyone again soon. Have a great day. Bye.
Thank you.